Hi everyone, it's Miss Mason, reading Counting by Sevens by the amazing Holly Goldberg Sloan. Today we're reading chapters 49 through 52. Chapter 49. A rototiller is like a jackhammer, but for dirt. And we get one. Kwang Ha doesn't come to Sam's U-Rent on Saturday because he's going bowling. I had no idea he was a bowler. But maybe that's how it is with bowling. You do it and then leave it behind. I think Dell would have liked to go bowling instead of Sam's U-Rent, but he's agreed to this. The machine we rent requires real upper body strength to operate, especially when it is attacking hard ground, so only Dell can use it. Dell's pretty doughy around the middle, and his large stomach vibrates as if it's been put in a can and shaken at the paint store in one of those mixing machines. But the good news is that the solid ground really gets pulverized. The bad news is that Dell is probably going to be too sore to walk for a week. I investigate the newly tilled soil downstairs in the future garden. At dinner I share the good news. I tested the soil, and it's neutral. The pH is a perfect 7. Mai and Patty and Dell look up from their food. Kwang Ha keeps shoveling with his fork. Plants, like people, thrive when there is balance. So when the soil is too acidic, which can be thought of as sour, you should lower the pH factor. You can do this by adding lime. When the soil is too alkaline, which can be thought of as being too sweet, you need to add sulfur. I explain this, but I can tell that it's not a spellbinding discussion for the people I live with. Dell says, "Did you taste the soil to find out?" I can't tell whether Dell means this as a joke or not, but it causes Kwang Ha to laugh. I realize that whenever he laughs, it's some kind of relief. It's like a dam bursting. Patty says, "That's great, Willow." Kwang Ha then mutters, "What's really being measured are ions of hydrogen." He seems as surprised as I am by his own statement. He puts more spicy sauce on his pork, looking guilty, as if learning something in science class is a crime. Table, silence. Then Mai says, "And 7 is your favorite number, Willow." I don't explain that I don't count by sevens anymore, but I still do appreciate the beauty of the number. I'm thinking that everyone will get more involved tomorrow when we do the planting, and I find I'm really looking forward to that. There was an X factor, an unseen or unknown influence. We went to sleep with a large rectangle of newly tilled, well-balanced soil in the courtyard where we live. It was a thing of beauty, at least to me. But a Santa Ana wind blew in the middle of the night. This happens here. Certain conditions propel a stream of dry air from the mountains to the shoreline. We wake to a dust bowl. I've never seen such filth. The walls and the windows of the first-floor units are covered in a layer of newly ground dirt. I go downstairs and I stare. It's as if a grime tornado hit the place. After I show Dell, he limps to the garage and yanks down the building rep parking sign. He doesn't want anyone to know where he lives. Dell is so sore from his rototiller experience that he can barely move. Or maybe he's just that upset about the dirt damage. He wraps himself in a blanket, lies down on the floor of his apartment, and closes his eyes. He looks like a mummy. I would like to take a picture, but I decide it's not appropriate. Mai has a plan. She puts up a large sign downstairs. It says, "Construction project underway. Apologies for inconvenience." I feel like we should tell Dell what we're up to, but Mai says to leave him alone. Mai then gets her mother to drive Dell's car to Sam's U-Rent, where we return the rototiller and now rent a power sprayer. Mai and Dell have different approaches to everything in life. Mai is the ultimate pragmatist. Maybe she gets that from her mother. Power sprayers are powerful, hence the name. I haven't been around one until now, and so this is all new to me. We get back to the gardens of Glenwood, and Mai goes upstairs and puts on her new, used raincoat. She bought the designer jacket when I got my running shoes, and I thought it was a waste of money. Now I wish I had one. Kwang Ha comes downstairs when we're just about to get started. Maybe because the rental equipment resembles a machine gun, he looks interested. Kwang Ha wants to try pressure spraying. He fires up the engine as if he's holding an Uzi. The force of the water takes a lot of strength to control. A river of grime falls. I watch from a distance, and it takes some time before I realize that something else is happening besides the cleanup. The pink paint underneath the dirt is also being removed, and so is the bumpy stucco coating. This is all demonstrating the theory of connectedness, not mathematically speaking, but in a real-world way. Removing the lava rock and the black plastic liner exposed the hard-packed dirt. Once that was tilled and the wind whipped a portion of it up onto the walls, the power sprayer was brought in, and that started to take off the deadly colored pink paint as well as the grime. What's underneath is a soft, natural gray. But now we have to power spray the whole place to make it match, or else repaint the building. Connectedness. One thing leads to another, often in unexpected ways. Chapter 50. We rotate. If the sprayer is on the lowest setting, even I can manage. Kwang Ha does a huge section, pretending, I believe, that he's in a video game. I take my turn, but my productivity is lousy. It's such a struggle for me to control the nozzle that I can barely move. I am the littlest one, but I give it everything I have. I'm pretty sure that if I hadn't been doing my afternoon jogging, I wouldn't have lasted for more than a minute on my feet. We have to be very careful because the filthy water runs down the windows. So after we've washed an area, then we need to clean the glass. But we can't do that with the power sprayer. We're all now working, even Dell, when Hiro's taxi pulls up. I see him and Patty talking for a while at the curb. Somehow, it doesn't seem strange that his whole back seat just happens to be filled with rags and 3 of those squeegee things. Hiro finds an extension ladder in the carport, and he takes over the window issues. It's dark, and we're still at it. Even Kwang Ha hasn't given up. We take turns sitting on plastic milk crates and aiming the flashlight beams up at the building. A man comes out and we think he's going to yell at us, but he's friendly and gives us each a peppermint candy. He even donates a poinsettia for the garden when we're ready to plant. He's had it for almost a year and can't believe he's kept it alive. We have finished the interior courtyard walls, and now we're working our way around the outside of the building. We have brooms to direct the runoff, which is a big job in and of itself. There's a pink-brown stream with stucco bits that flows from whatever area has been sprayed. If you aren't aiming the light where you're swishing the water, you're swishing the water down into the drains. Hiro has been washing windows for hours. Kwang Ha has taken control as the most valuable player of the apartment power spraying. He is the only one who power sprays like an athlete. Since I've never seen him do any kind of sport, and I'm kind of skeptical about his bowling, I'm surprised. Physical stamina is a component in leadership, even in the modern world, where it isn't necessary to be able to harness an ox, because it's still impressive if you can. As it gets really late, Dell retrieves one of his old lawn chairs from the second-floor balcony. He starts to relax. Or maybe the muscle pain relievers Patty gave him kick in. People now seem to think the garden is a good idea. It's possible they're just thrilled to have their windows washed. The sky is filled with stars. More stars than I ever remember seeing, and I've spent a lot of time at night with my head tilted back, analyzing the constellations. Kwang Ha has done more laughing in the last 10 hours than I've seen in the last 10 weeks. He just finds everything funny now. I didn't understand until recently that emotions could be so contagious. I now know why comedians are important in culture. Sitting on a milk crate in the middle of the night with a flashlight illuminating what at this point is a paint blasting project, I laugh too. At nothing really. And then I realize that I'm laughing because I'm laughing. It's after 3 in the morning. Hiro's gone. Patty went to bed after he left. Mai can't seem to stop herself from pushing runoff water away from the building with a broom. Dell is still outside, but he's been asleep on his lawn chair for an hour. He got cold and climbed into a black plastic garbage bag. He punched his feet through the bottom, and now he reminds me of a talking raisin I once saw in a TV commercial. A guy in the apartments across the street told us to turn off the machine a few hours ago, but Kwang Ha ignored him. Finally, Kwang Ha gives us a signal, and Mai kills the motor. Sheen, Kwang Ha, and I stand back and point our flashlights as we stare at what's been done. Layers have been removed of dirt and pink paint and acne-like lumpy stucco. The whole surface of the structure is smooth and sleek. All the cracks are gone, and so are the bald patches where the stucco had crumpled off. The odd design of the place with its high windows and box-like mass now appears futuristic and forward-thinking. at least to me. And it is not an exaggeration to say that the Gardens of Glenwood is the cleanest building in all of Bakersfield. For 3 days it is hard for any of us to move our arms. We walk around like plastic soldiers with our limbs held tightly to our sides. I go down at night and water the dirt to keep it from blowing again. And I prep the soil. I add a slow-release, granular fertilizer that I got Dell to buy at Home Depot. By midweek we are ready for the next step. We have over 4 dozen sunflowers in 23 containers, a less than thriving poinsettia, and bags of mulch to spread. As soon as we put the sunflowers in the ground, they should take off. They will send roots down as far as 6 feet into the soil. Their single stem in the next few weeks will each produce a terminal flower bud. I know how this all works. About a month later, after they'd gained up to 8 feet in height, the large flat disc that is the flower will unfurl. For a week it will bloom. Bees will arrive and pollinate the many florets that make up what we think of as a single flower, but what is in reality many small blossoms. A week later, when the blooming is over, the florets will turn into seeds and ripen. All of the energy will move to this generation of life, to this next generation of life. The plant will have given birth to the future, and then it will be done. This is the way it works. From the bacteria in the sink to the fruit fly circling the bowl of bananas, we're all doing the same thing. But if people saw all of this for what it really is, who knows if anyone would get out of bed in the morning? I will soon have the garden covered with a crop of sunflowers, but in 5 weeks it'll have to be replanted. And so will I. What goes in the soil next should be more permanent. Right now I'm the sunflower. Temporary. But attaching myself to the ground is underneath me. The garden is challenging me, as always, to see my own situation. My court hearing is next month. I'll be ready. I'm not sure for what exactly, but maybe that's what being ready really means. Chapter 51. Dell pulled into the parking lot. There wasn't a place for him, for his car, for his always now sore from exercising body. After circling the lot in frustration, he lined up in front of the only available spot he could find. It was tiny, crowded on one side by a school district van, and on the other by the chain-link fence that wrapped around the entire property. Dell stepped on the gas, intent on inching slowly ahead. Instead, his foot slipped. Every hair on his body stood on end at the sound of metal on metal as the fence post dug a crease along the entire right side of his vehicle. Dell cut the engine as he shouted and swore and pounded his fist, which hurt because he accidentally hit the dashboard instead of the upholstery. He found himself thinking of Willow. She would have told him before he went forward that the space was too small. She would have calculated the mass or the distance or figured out something. Dell pushed the thought of the girl out of his mind and opened the door. He was faced with another harsh reality. Even though he'd taken out the fencing along the passenger side, he was still so close to the van next to him that he doubted he could get out of his car. He'd just have to make this work. Wasn't that what life was teaching him now? Dell gritted his teeth and got his left leg and hip out. But his tummy, even angled and sucked in, was a real problem. Hoping for the best, he let his belly go. It pushed in all directions, and the edge of his car door dug straight into the side of the neighboring van. Another metal-on-metal sound. He stared wide-eyed at the damage. That van panel was like cardboard. Dell slammed his door shut and took off in a run away from the scratched metal crime scene. But as he made his way through rows of cars, a dark mass leaped from behind a tire and slithered right between his wobbly legs. Dell felt the fur touch his ankles and he shrieked like a startled child. Inside the low brick building that housed most of the administration, he could see heads suddenly appear in windows. Dell dropped down to the asphalt to shield himself from the peeping professionals. And that's when he got a close-up look at the creature, formerly known as Cheddar. The cat was thin and mangy, with one hairless ear and a chunk missing from his now crooked tail. But the animal was more than scarred and dirty. He was frantic and desperate. Cheddar arched his back, and in an attempt to appear fierce, he showed his spiky teeth as his pale green eyes turned dark jade. A chill ran up Dell's spine. He had adopted Cheddar, and then he let the animal fend for himself in a parking lot. He had not made a single attempt to rescue him. Dell stared into the eyes of the frightened feline, and something clicked. He had to take more responsibility for his actions. He'd start with the cat. Dell grabbed Cheddar by the scruff of the neck and was surprised at how easy it was to get control of the animal. Cheddar was not a feral cat. He'd been brought up with the touch of a human hand, and he seemed perfectly happy to get back into the company of a man with possible access to canned food. Dell crossed the lot back to his car, and then he squeezed himself and Cheddar into his vehicle. Cheddar jumped into the back as Dell started the engine. He could hear a new sound now. It was low but distinct. The cat was purring under his seat. Dell reversed out of the parking spot, and curiously this time, the fence post didn't even touch his vehicle. Dell dropped off Cheddar at a vet on Central Avenue with instructions for a flea bath and a full exam. He'd pick the animal up at the end of the day. He then returned to the school district offices, and this time parked on the street and walked 2 blocks. He then went straight to the main office and reported damaging the van. It turned out that the school district had insurance, and the woman told him not to worry. Dell went to his office with a spring in his step. Maybe it was the running. He had lost almost 15 pounds. Or maybe it was knowing that he'd done right by Cheddar. Chapter 52. The cat is back. It's very big news around here. At least to me. Sadhu is allergic, so Cheddar is going to live with us in number 28. For now. I'm obsessed with this cat. And it's working out because Cheddar is sort of obsessed with me. Or at the very least interested. Which in the world of felines counts as obsessive behavior. The cat sleeps on my bunk of the Semper Fi beds, tucked inside the curl of my body. He wheezes once he's really asleep. When I get up early to go to the bathroom, I see the cat move his crooked tail in his sleep. His paws twitch. He's running. I would like to see those dreams. Cheddar waits on the ledge of the front window for me to come home from the salon in the afternoon. Or maybe he just enjoys the view. But it certainly looks like he sits with a sense of expectation. I have my life savings in a metal box under my bed. I've tried to contribute each week for food costs. I think of it as a reverse allowance. But Patty refuses to accept the money. I try to get Dell to take some, and he also says no. But his no isn't as solid as her no, but he gets his point across. So today is the first time I'm spending any of my cash. I go to the pet store on 7th Street. I pick out a lime green breakaway safety cat collar. It is highly reflective and glows in the dark. I pay an extra $2 to have Cheddar seared into the bendable plastic. I add Patty's phone number, not Dell's, for emergencies. I also insist that the collar have a bell. Cats in the wild do so much destruction to the bird population. But I think that if Cheddar has his way, the cat will never set foot on anything but carpet for the rest of his life. I've left the door open, and he has no interest in even investigating the hallway in our building. Once I get back to the apartment, and Cheddar has been outfitted with a new collar, Quang Ha complains about it, what he calls the annoying ringing. But even he has to admit that the cat, with the hairless ear and the crooked tail, is in his own way sort of inspiring. Dell and I talk about practical things now in my weekly sessions. I have 2 concerns. I'm anxious, of course, about finding a legal guardian, and I'm constantly thinking about what to do once the sunflowers are finished. The plants have grown in these last few weeks, and they have bloomed. Quang's Ha's is the tallest. It's reached almost 7 feet. I think everyone in the building has really appreciated the spectacle. But a few people have complained about the bees. But it's impossible to please everyone. Now these plants are on the downside of their life cycle. I need to think of what to do once they are removed. If you slice off part of the most established plants, this mature plant can be thought of as the parent, and you nurture the severed portion, it will grow. It is called a cutting. I have no real resources that I can think of, because my life savings don't add up to too much, to landscape the large area of soil in the courtyard. I told the bank that we had a plan, and I presented that in the drawings that were submitted. But that was hypothetical, and this is reality. I'm going to need to take life from what I can find in the neighborhood around me in Bakersfield to landscape this place. I start small. A basket, Scissors. Wet paper towels to keep my clippings moist. I have a few small cuttings taking root in water glasses by the window. I need to think bigger. Dell drives me to the Southside Plant Nursery on Saturday, and we buy rooting hormone and 3 large bags of potting soil. While we're there, I see Henry E. Pollock. He runs the place. I've known this guy since I was very young. He and my dad used to talk about football, and he gave us discounts for years. I've looked at fungus and insect infestation for him in the past, and I've given advice about grafting limbs on fruit trees. I'm in the back checking out their new Pittosporum tenuifolium, and I catch sight of Dell talking to Henry in the corner. It looks sort of serious, which makes me nervous. In the car, I ask Dell what they were whispering about, and he says, "Henry wanted to know how you're doing." People are uncomfortable asking a kid that question, so they ask adults. But those adults a lot of times have no clue about the answer. I look out the window at all the plants growing in people's gardens and get lost in that. But later, at the stoplight, I say, "I'm trying not to put down permanent roots. That's probably what you should tell people like Henry." Kwang Ha is on the couch watching a TV show about a guy who drives around the country in a convertible eating bacon cheeseburgers. Mai is looking at a catalog for swimsuit enthusiasts. Dell is clipping his beard into a paper bag to keep the bits from flying around the room. Cheddar is asleep. Patty is at the salon. She's been staying late more often now. I worry about that, but she doesn't like anyone to question her schedule. I come into the living room and explain my plan, which is for us to drive around town and take small cuttings from interesting plants. Kwang Ha doesn't look at me but manages to say, "Wouldn't that be stealing?" I'm encouraged. At least I have his attention. That's an interesting question. If we were on somebody's private property, we would be trespassing, and that's breaking the law. Kwang Ha then mumbles something that I can't understand. So I continue. Plants are people's property. But what if the plant extends into the area of the sidewalk? What if we're on public property, such as a park, or a library, or a state building? Kwang Ha keeps his eyes on the television and says, "What if you move to the left? You're blocking part of the TV." I step to the side. Silence. Only the television and the sounds of Dell struggling to clip his shockingly wiry facial hair. And then Kwang Ha says, "Just take stuff out of people's green trash cans. The work will already be done for you." I look at him now with admiration. Kwang Ha's mother is the hardest worker that I've ever seen, and she's passed on to her son a unique quality. He understands labor in a different way. If he's not interested in something, he'll do anything to get out of doing it. I mean it when I say to him, "Kwang Ha, you may very well have a future career in management." As if to drive home his point, he says, "If there are any ice cream bars in the freezer, I'll take one." There have never been ice cream bars in the freezer, but I now will buy a box at the first opportunity.